now our first hymn.
A reading from 1 John 4:1-6. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. And every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard that is coming and is now already in the world. Little children, you are from God, and have conquered them. For the one who is in you is greater than the one in the world. They are from the world, therefore what they say is from the world, and the world listens to them. We are from God. Whoever knows God listens to us, and whoever is not from God does not listen to us. From this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Jesus said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, because he abides with you, and he will be in you. This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Christ. And you may be seated. Here's a challenge for you. Try advocating for a religious and spiritual leader, not to mention one that we call the Word made flesh, who died by lethal injection as a criminal. And just saying those words will be grating to the ears, can't they? And well, it could be easily dismissed by those on the outside as the ravings of some lunatic fringe cult. Again, advocating for a religious and spiritual leader, the Word made flesh, who died by lethal injection. Now, the ideal of God who dwelt among the normal run of humanity is not unheard of in the ancient world. The Greek gods were continually involving themselves in human affairs. Just read the Iliad by Homer, and you will see that the entire plot of the book revolves around the gods involved in human affairs. And also the type of God-man which the Christians proclaim was also not unheard of in the Greek world to which they were spreading the gospel. Hercules and Achilles from the Iliad were both products of the union between the gods and humans. But you see, the story the Christians were proclaiming was different. A God made flesh who came not to meddle in human affairs, but to become involved in human affairs. A fleshy God-man whose mission was not to lord it over humans, his fleshy humans, but to reach out and touch human flesh. Not some God in human clothes or some God-man hybrid, you see. Paul sums it up pretty well in 1 Corinthians. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified. Hear this, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. Proclaim Christ what? Crucified. Stumbling block to Jews, foolishness to Gentiles. But God, hear this, God chose what is foolish in the world, hear this, to shame the wise, and what is weak in the world to shame the strong. Who today in our society wants to be both foolish, weak? We preach Christ crucified, says Paul. We're used to hearing that, aren't we? Christ crucified. Sure. Even wear a cross around my neck. One of the sermons I remember from my youth was when Pastor Sogstead pointed to the crucifix that was on the altar at Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church and suggested that it might be better if it were an electric chair. In any case, we get a taste of the scandal. Listen to those words. We get a taste of the scandal of proclaiming a crucified, fleshy God. Right? A God who died through lethal injection. Writer of 1 John is addressing his letter to a people for whom the cross was an ever-present reminder. They knew what a cross was. And it wasn't something neat and silver that you put around your neck. It is an ever-present reminder of the power and the terror of Rome. And it's not much to say, ladies and gentlemen, that many, if not all, who were reading this book witnessed a person on the cross, since crucifixion was a public event. Yes. They were to preach Christ crucified. His fleshy God, man, Word made flesh, crucified, in the middle of a city, and neighbors who, upon hearing this proclamation, must have wondered about the sanity of this group. And maybe figured it was just the ravings of a fringe cult. So this God human, this Word made flesh, maybe we can soft pedal it a little bit. What do you think? Right? Maybe change the emphasis a little bit. A little less cross, a little more resurrection. A little less weakness. It'll work kind of today, where everybody likes a winner. Everybody likes somebody who's strong and tough, right? So get a little less of that weakness, a little more strength. A little less foolishness. A little more being smart. A little less flesh and a little more God. Writer of 1 John makes clear the reality of the fleshy God, the Word made flesh, and indeed the crucified God made flesh is the only possible proclamation for Christians. We indeed must proclaim Christ, the very fleshy God, crucified. For you see, as John tells us, every spirit that confesses Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from what? Is from God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus is not God is not from God. In fact, the writer of 1 John tells us is the spirit of the Antichrist. It's interesting, ladies and gentlemen, that the only occurrence of the term Antichrist in the New Testament is not in Revelation, but in 1 John and 2 John. Not in part of some kind of apocalyptic text and fireworks and all of that, but in the books of 1 and 2 John, speaking of the reality of the fleshiness of the Word made flesh, the reality of the life, death, and resurrection of the God made flesh in Jesus Christ. And this reality, the reality of the cross, of the death of the God-man, is important to our faith. For the Spirit speaks this to us. We preach Christ crucified. A stumbling block, foolishness. To those who are perishing, Paul tells us, Christ, the power of God, Christ, the wisdom of God. You're in the war zone, convince me that this is the only God that makes any kind of sense. In the words of my good friend friend Martin Luther, I know of no God except him who was made flesh, nor do I want to have another. The God who suffers and dies gathers in all of us humans whose encounter with the world has left us scarred and bleeding, empty of hope, those who mourn the loss of loved one, those for whom life is nothing more than a long series of tragedies, all gathered together by our suffering God in the flesh. We can gaze upon the one on the cross, suffering and dying, see the face of God. See the face of the God who loves us. We preach Christ crucified, the very fleshy Word made flesh, whose death on that instrument of death, of capital punishment, a criminal's death, a real death, brings us forgiveness, brings us life, brings us salvation. Amen. Receive the benediction. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warmly on your face. May the rains fall safely upon the fields of your life. And until we meet again, may God always hold you in the palm of his hand. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Let us sing our final hymn.
in peace. Serve the Lord.
Thanks be